I'm Edward Warfield. I'm the publisher of City Biz. I'm honored today to interview Nancy Greene, the chairman of Miles Stockbridge. Welcome, Nancy.
Thank you for having me.
You have an interesting career. You spent a long period of time at Miles Stockbridge, and you had a practice in the area of commercial real estate. Can you give us sort of an overview of your career at Miles Stockbridge and some of the important milestones?
I started at Miles and Stockbridge as a young real estate associate. I never really actually thought that I was going to work at a big firm. When I was in law school, I had actually planned to work for an environmental nonprofit. Had actually spent some time in law school working as an intern for the Chesapeake Bay Foundation and really, really found that rewarding. But the opportunity came to take a position in real estate at Miles and Stockbridge, and so I did. And 24 years later, I'm still here. I have practiced in all areas of real estate over the course of my career: real estate development, real estate finance, leasing, pretty much all of it. And so it was just been a great opportunity for me to learn with so many great lawyers at Miles in my real estate career. Addition to my real estate career, which I'm still practicing, I've also become chairman of the firm. And so I've had some milestones along the way as it relates to that. Started out as an associate, as mentioned, became a principal in the firm, eventually was appointed to the board and became chairman. And then along the way, I was also asked to be the assistant practice group leader for my department and then the practice group leader. And so I've kind of filled a lot of different roles within the firm. In addition to that, I've also kicked off the social impact committee. So I was the first chair of our social impact committee at the firm. So a lot of different milestones for me at Miles.
And so, yeah, you were recently became chairman. Can you tell us what the responsibilities of being chairman entail?
Sure. On any given day, it's a lot. But the general overall responsibility is I'm the steward of the firm's vision, strategic planning, our growth initiative, our diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. So anything that kind of sets the tone of the firm and the vision of the firm, and the strategic vision of the firm is kind of falls on me.
Can you provide us a snapshot of where Miles and Stockbridge is today? How many lawyers, the number of offices, the sort of the demographics of the firm?
Sure. So Miles and Stockbridge has been around for 89 years. We have 220 lawyers in 7 locations, 7 offices that spread across the mid-Atlantic. So we have offices in Maryland, DC, and then 2 offices in Virginia. And we're a full service business law firm. So we basically cover every kind of law that you can imagine, from IP to corporate to real estate, to all types of finance, high net worth divorces, estates and trust, kind of the gamut of labor and employment, anything you can think of, we handle.
And so before we jump into the important role that you played in your diversity initiatives, can you highlight some of your key sort of important initiatives as chairman?
I've only been chairman 3 years, so to have big highlights in those 3 years, it's hard. If you separate out the diversity inclusion, which we'll get to. I would say the biggest challenge, but also the biggest success I've had so far has just been navigating the pandemic this past year. This was a significant challenge in the beginning. I wasn't sure what to expect. Hadn't really been trained on how to navigate a pandemic in any of my prior roles. But was very proud of the way our firm handled it. We came together as a firm, worked really well together. We transitioned to working virtually really seamlessly, which if you had asked me a year ago, I don't know if we had the capabilities to do that or not, or if we had the mindset within the firm to achieve it. At the time, so many lawyers just liked coming to the office, having their staff there, having their secretary there. So we transitioned really, really smoothly with technology to work at home. And then we remained really strong throughout the year. We stayed connected. We had a virtual retreat. We created support groups, particularly for our parents that were dealing with young children. And so in addition to just making sure that we got all our work done and served our clients, we did a lot to kind of stay connected with one another and help each other through the year. And that would probably be my biggest achievement. Even if I 10 years from now look back, that may end up being one of my biggest achievements, but it's the one that just most recently happened.
So you've spearheaded a significant diversity initiative. You've got a number of affinity groups, including women, lawyers of color, and Jewish colleagues, and you've got a number of partnerships. Can you give us sort of an overview of those your diversity initiatives?
So we actually have four diversity initiatives within the firm. As you've mentioned, we have our women's network, we have the Miles Minority Network, we have the Tribe, which is our Jewish association, and then we also just recently kicked off about a year ago, end of last year, our LGBTQ Alliance to support our lawyers there and also to bring everyone together. We feel like that's an area where you don't just have to be within that community to be part of that organization, but it's about bringing people together and supporting one another. So those were the different minority and alliances within the firm. We have also a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee. It's led by Craig Long, who is a partner in our firm. He's also a board member and one of our principals in our labor and employment practice area. He works with Jose, who is our chief, and I got to get these names right, Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer, and he also handles all of our professional development. And between the two of them and me, we sit on a diversity committee. The diversity committee is made up of not just the leaders of all of our different affinity groups, but also we have representation from all of our offices, offices outside of Baltimore, so that we make sure we really get a lot of kind of thought leadership across the firm. So that organization and committee meets and helps advise the board on policies and things that we should be doing firm-wide, as well as supporting our affinity networks. We also do we have been putting a lot of effort into supporting the local law schools, the University of Maryland and University of Baltimore, in both leadership programs and scholarship programs to kind of help that next generation of lawyers that are going to be coming into the workplace. And we also, this past year, started what we call our Black Business Initiative, and it's to support emerging and startup Black businesses in the local communities. And that's just something that we've kicked off the ground really as a response to all the social unrest that, while it's been existing for a very long time, it really kind of bubbled to a head this past summer. And Miles really wanted to figure out how could we do our part, and not just do our part financially. You know, we can contribute to this organization and contribute to that organization financially, but what could we do as lawyers? And so we came up with this idea, and it was really one of my colleagues, Venroy July, who's also a principal in our firm. He is in our corporate group, who said, we really need to try to make an economic impact. And one way to make an economic impact in the Black communities is to help startup and Black businesses with networking, with, just free legal advice, having them get their corporate documents in order, signing leases, doing all the things that a startup needs to do. And usually startups don't have the money to pay for lawyers at that stage of their business. And so they can sometimes enter into bad leases or bad corporate documents. And so providing free legal work to them would help those businesses get off the ground. So I can say that so far we have interviewed and met with 220 clients, 220 businesses that fit the model of what we're trying to help. And we've opened 60 matters so far to assist them.
So you touched a little bit on the firm and your response to COVID. Were there any positive outcomes of 2020? I mean, did you see anything looking in the rearview mirror? To talk about positive outcomes from COVID is hard to talk about, but did anything come out of that you say, hey, we would not have gone there had we not gone through the challenges of managing COVID?
I'm a very positive person, so I'm always going to see the bright light in all situations. So it actually sounds kind of terrible to say that, there's a bright side to COVID, but I think there's a significant bright side to COVID for many reasons, both personally and professionally for the firm. So for the firm, like I mentioned earlier, we really went virtual, and we went virtual very successfully. I have lawyers and staff able to work remotely from wherever. And that's something I have been pushing for years, even before the pandemic, as someone that's really stressing work-life balance, which is important to me. And I am also married and I have 5 children. And so I'm a very big fan of spending a lot of time with family. And sometimes the legal profession doesn't allow that to happen. So I've always been a proponent of finding that balance. And one of the ways to find that balance is if you can work remotely, you can take vacation and you can get home in time for dinner. And you can do those kinds of things that if you have to be in the office so much, you can't. So the being forced to do it because we had no other reason, made us really see how our technology worked, invest in technology that we may not have had in place. Although I will say my IT guy did a great job and we had really wonderful technology already in place. So that I really think that it's created a better opportunity for lawyers and staff to have more time with their family, more time on their personal health, whether it's exercising, yoga, just down meditation. And so my goal would be that after the pandemic is over, that we don't lose any of that. That my people can still work virtually when they need to and still come into the office when they need to. And when they come into the office, it's to collaborate and not to just sit in an office and crank out some work, but to truly collaborate and truly want to be together. So for me, I think that could be huge. And I'm actually looking forward to the light at the end of the tunnel of the pandemic to see what we've learned and how we can actually make the workplace better. And then I will say personally for me, and this is my hope for others that work at Miles and Stockbridge and others around the world, that I have spent a great more time with my family and my children. I've played more board games than I ever did in all the years leading up to this, and card games, and read more books with my kids. And so for me personally, it's been very, very rewarding to have the time at home with my family.
So what are the growth plans for Miles and Stockbridge? Are there any mergers, any new offices, or are you going to live off of lateral hires? Yeah, where's Miles and Stockbridge 3 years or 4 years from today?
So that's a good question. Because I don't know, right? So anything is possible. So nothing is off the table. I would say that we do have a growth strategy. We are constantly looking to grow. For us, growth isn't just adding lawyers, but it's adding lawyers with a similar culture that we have, that they're going to fit in well, similar practice areas, and for the most part, the same geographic region. I'm not looking right now at a growth merger outside of this area, just because part of our culture is staying connected and seeing one another. And so the Maryland, Virginia, DC area is where our growth strategy is focused, and continuing to bring in laterals or groups of laterals that have practice areas that complement our practice areas. So I can't say I'm like looking at something in California or Chicago or Dallas or anything like that, where you sometimes hear that firms are. But I'm also saying that 3 to 5 years from now, I don't know. So I can't say that anything's off the table. But that's not where our focus is right now. It's really in this Mid-Atlantic area and really dominating this area.
Can you share some of your mentors during your career?
Sure. So I had, so many mentors. I still have so many mentors. That's one of the things I like to tell young people, that even though I'm chairman of the firm, I still have really good mentors, and I seek advice from them all the time. And so you're never too old or too far along in your career to have mentors. But I can say really early on in my career, I had a number of partners that were my mentors, and they were predominantly male. And that just because that was the practice of law, it was a predominantly male dominated practice. And my mentors were amazing. I had Rich Levine, and who's at DLA right now, and Bill Define, who's retired, Jeff Seibert, Randy Rutledge, Tim Kasgar, who's also retired. They were significant mentors in my practice growth, like learning the practice of law, learning how to support clients, learning how to deliver exceptional client service. So they were tremendous role models for me. In addition to that, I will share that I had a very unique mentoring situation where I had a number of the secretaries who I think really wanted to see a female lawyer succeed, mentor me as well. And so these were the secretaries that worked for all of the gentlemen that I just mentioned, and they would give me little pointers like, oh, he likes the documents this way, or do his folders that way. And they were constantly just giving me advice throughout my entire career, and some of them have since gone on and retired, but really wanting me to be successful and almost kind of mothering me a little bit along the way, particularly when I was young. And I was very fortunate to have that. And then as I got further into my career, I met men and women, of all diversity that have had an influence on me, whether within the firm or outside the firm, with clients. I have clients that I've been working with now for my entire 24-year career history that I've kind of grown up working with. They mentor me to this day. So I've definitely been fortunate to have a lot of people that have looked out for me and wanted to make sure that I was successful.
So, do you have any advice for others interested in leadership roles?
I will start by saying if you would ask me when I first joined Miles if I was ever going to be even a practice group leader, let alone chairman of the firm, I would have thought that was crazy. At the time I joined the firm, I actually was just coming in, going to do, my billable work. I actually thought maybe I would, leave the firm at some point and go join a nonprofit because I really enjoyed working with the nonprofits. Although I will share that the people at Miles are so wonderful, I never wanted to leave the people. So I would say that what I did and what I try to advise people to do, whether it's in your professional legal career or if you're actually wanting to be in quote leadership, always be a help and always be a resource. There's numerous times where, the person that you're working for just needs you to help out a little bit. And so at the end of the day, if you just say, what can I do to help? What do you need? 99% of the time, they may say, I don't need anything. I'm good. But 1% of the time, they might need something. And if you just always are available to help, that can become addictive to the person that you were offering that to. And I see that in younger people as well. If someone's offering to help me from time to time and I actually take them up on it, then I actually start seeking out that person to work on my matters because they've made that experience for me just a little bit easier. So anything that a person coming up can do, whether it's setting the meetings, making sure the invite list is right, just little things like that, you'll start to get noticed for being helpful. And people really like helpful people. And so that would be one advice. Just kind of always put yourself out there. Another advice I would say is, though, don't take on anything that you're not going to embrace. So don't offer to do something just because you think, oh, I should do that. I'll get noticed if you really aren't committed to it, because you'll probably end up dropping the ball. You'll probably put it at the end of your pile of things to do and not get to it and not do a good job. And it's not ever good to get noticed for doing a bad job. So really only take on stuff that you want to actually commit to doing. And then the other advice that I've personally learned about myself is to push myself to slightly uncomfortable places at times. So I will share, I hate public speaking. I, to this day, still don't really like it. But when I was really much younger in my career, I really hated it. And the thought of standing up in front of the board and giving a presentation on behalf of my practice group or something like that really gave me a bit of anxiety. And I could have easily in all of those situations turned to my co-practice group leader and said, why don't you do it? You do it. And, but I knew that I needed to push beyond my comfort zone a little bit. And so I started kind of doing the things that made me feel slightly uncomfortable to kind of get over some of that anxiety. And so I think that young people and other people that want to move forward, you have to just challenge yourself to get out of what feels comfortable.
Well, thank you for sharing your time and your vision for Miles Stockbridge. It's exciting to see the initiatives that you've implemented for diversity. You deserve a lot of accolades for part of your mission. So thank you for your time.
Well, thank you. And I would love to refresh this conversation 3 years from now and be able to look back and see, how much more we've accomplished. Because, this is just kind of almost the beginning. When I talk about my strategic vision for the firm, I just have so many ideas. And so my hope is to see, 3 years from now, it'll look even better.
So we can do this with whatever frequency you want. Every month, every 3 years, every decade. Yeah. So yeah, we'd love
Probably
to update.
Not more than once a year.
We'll do an update at the end of the year.
All right. That sounds great.
Thank you.
And thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.